Hello, my name is Nora Kerrigan, and I am a Learning Specialist Senior at Think Tank. My largest role is as a Learning Specialist, which is I support specifically students in their first semester. Students who are enrolled in Math 100 also get co-reqed into SAS 100AX, and they also have a Learning Specialist. So that's primarily the student population that I work with. And as a learning specialist, I support students. Our main sort of focus is school. Our main focus is how do you study? How do you live on your own for the first time? How do you navigate this ridiculously large, confusing campus? But then along with that, we could navigate life. We could talk about how being here it's a lot. It can be a really, really big thing. And so I typically talk to students. The goal is to talk to them at least 2 or 3 times a semester, just sort of check in at the beginning. How are resources going? What do you need to know? Check in sort of at the end of the semester. What's going on? How do we make sure that we can study? How do we succeed here? That's the big, primarily what I do. But as a senior learning specialist, I also help with running the peer academic coach program. So there are 4 seniors who are the supervisors for 17 peer academic coaches who are undergrad students who basically do the learning specialist position, but at the undergrad level. That's an excellent question. I don't know the answer because I was not a senior the last time they went through hiring, but essentially word of mouth, students learn about it and they apply, and then there's a formal interview, and from that interview we sort of decide yay or nay. I've wanted to be a learning specialist since I had a learning specialist in undergrad. I came to the U of A. I'm originally from California. I came to the U of A for the SALT program, and I loved my learning specialist. She very much, I would not have gotten through undergrad without having her. There was no way. And I thought that was such a profound relationship and such a profound experience in my own undergrad that I graduated the U of A and I was like, I want this job. I want to do this. I didn't really know how to do, how do you become a learning specialist? If you Google the term learning specialist, what I do here at Think Tank doesn't come up. And so I have my bachelor's in special education. So I was a special education teacher in Tucson for about 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I was like, I kind of done with K-12. That's a nightmare in its own. And I really wanted to come back to the U of A, and I ended up being an instructional specialist. So the SAS class that's in the Schedule for Success program.
Right.
I was an instructor for that, and then I was like, I want this position. I want to be here. And then the pandemic happened, and I took some time away from the U of A, and then I was asked to come back as a learning specialist. That were more than just tutoring. Tutoring is a very big component, but we also have workshops and supplemental instruction and the learning specialist program, and we have satellite locations, right? A lot of students are like, well, I don't want to walk across campus to Basque, even though we're not that far from anything. But one of the biggest things is that we have different locations, and now post-pandemic we have stuff online. We're very, very accessible. We have weekend hours, right? We're more than just, go and get math tutoring. We're more than just, go make sure that you're studying for that biology class. We are an eclectic team of slightly odd people in the best way. We very much, I think one of the things that people don't necessarily know or understand is that we're more than just, oh, let's talk about your grades, right? Like that conversation comes up a lot. I look at students' grades. I help students calculate their grades all the time, but beyond that, it's
the personal connection and the rhetoric that you get to build with your students.
Exactly. Very much the rapport building. They're like, well, if we meet more than once, then I get to know you as a person, you get to know me as a person, we get to connect on this other level, and then, okay, I don't see you for 3 or 4 months, that's fine. Then you have a crisis or something's happening and you don't know where to turn, you have your learning specialist. So I like reminding students that, like, on the surface, it seems like, oh, I'm just gonna talk to somebody about my grades, like I know what's going on. And in August, you might know what's going on. But by October,
it's a whole new ballpark.
It's a whole new experience. As a first-year student at the University of Arizona, this is a big place with lots of departments and lots of people who want to support you. But it's really hard to figure out, who do I ask what question to? Right? Is this for the advisor? Is this for financial aid? I don't know how to find clubs. I'm kind of thinking about Greek life. Where do I turn? Where do I go? It's a lot. I kind of know enough about enough things that I'm a really good person to ask. Because if I don't know the answer, I could probably figure out who we can ask to find your answer.
Right.
So very much like, you could go to 12 departments and ask the same question and be turned, or you could go to your learning specialist and be like, oh, well, let's go walk over to financial aid, or let's go check out the club fair, or let's go check out this website together. Like very much like one-stop shops, just sort of for all things U of A. You should come see your learning specialist, because on your best day, your learning specialist wants to celebrate with you. And on your worst day, your learning specialist is here to support you, navigate, come up with answers, and a game plan. I see primarily students in Math 100 and Schedule for Success. I see students on what's called academic recovery. So those are students who have dipped their GPA below 2.0, and getting out of that hole can be a challenge, and so having someone to sort of talk to and talk about study strategies with. And then as well as we have academic coaching, which is a paid for service, so exactly what I do for all of my students, except students opt into it. So essentially, there's one website, you fill out the application, Carly in that office gets it. Depending on what it says, she might refer specifically to, like, hey, I think Pete might work really well with this student. Or she might just say, hey, I have a student who wants academic coaching. And she'll sort of say who has time and availability, and one of us will take it. Or if you've met with one of us and you're like, actually, you know what, Emily was awesome and I want to keep meeting with Emily, you could request a specific learning specialist. We're a pretty flexible program. It's as easy as, so for example, Emily, she has a student who she met with super early on in the semester, but was technically on my roster. And she just reached out and was like, hey, I've already met with the student, we have rapport, I'm gonna keep them, take them off your roster. And the opposite has happened, where, or I'll meet with a student and it doesn't quite work, and maybe I refer them to a peer academic coach, right? Like maybe meeting with a professional, that's too much, they wanna meet with someone who's in their same major, closer to their age, whatever. On a national level, academic coaching, which is what being a learning specialist or academic recovery coach is, on a national level, that's becoming a profession, which is kind of cool. And very much sort of this professional coaching sort of it's becoming seen as sort of like a necessary way of getting through college, and people are seeing that. Actually, the SALT program, which is not think tank, but that sort of was the original sort of model.
Right.
It's been around for 30 plus years, and people are seeing that there's this success. There's this, you find someone on campus to give you support and check in on you holistically, and you thrive better, right? You do better in this environment. And I think so on the University of Arizona campus, I would love, we're in this huge, beautiful building, but we're only like one little suite. Like, I would love, like, let's have a building of learning specialists. I know that there are definitely like colleges around campus who also specifically, like, they have learning specialists like specifically for their program. Like, I know I interviewed, obviously didn't get the job, but I interviewed for the vet school, and they have learning specialists that are just for their major. And so I would love if we were less siloed. Like, if all of the learning specialists, all of the academic coaches on campus, if they weren't all physically in the same location, we could all get the same training and sort of create a little bit more of a community. Like, what's working with vet students might work with first students, might work with business students, might work with pre-med, and sort of have a little bit more of a community, a little bit more of an intentional dialogue. Students that I get to see more than twice, I see their thought process change, their troubleshooting change, the way that they think about how they're interacting on campus change. That first meeting is very, we're just talking, right? Like, we might talk a little bit about what is a SOAP, or how do we organize, but really with building a relationship, there's that trust that you can come to me with basically any question, right? Because we've met so much, we have a relationship where at some point I'm going to start noticing patterns that you as the student might not notice. And so again, with multiple visits, multiple hours of talking, I might be able to see something that you might not notice, that you're not necessarily going to admit to your mom, that your roommate might not notice, your best friend isn't, you're telling me things you're not telling all of these other people in your life. And sort of being able to help break patterns or create patterns or change your habits sort of for the positive. I love S4S. I love that program. I tell my students all the time, if Schedule for Success had been a thing when I was a student, probably would have gotten my degree in biology because I would have had the confidence to go further in my math. I think that population, I love supporting that population, but they don't necessarily, it's hard to get them to come in, right? Like, it's very much like, do this for an assignment. Once they're here, like once they're in that chair, then I got them. Most of the time, then they'll come back. But the initial coming in is difficult. What I really like about academic recovery students is they're not first semester students. They're not even first year students, right? They know the college thing, like they know how to exist on this campus. It's just life happens, things happen, grades fall over, how do we pick back up? But they're very, very motivated, right? There's a different type of motivation from, oh, I'm a freshman in college, this is all exciting and new and scary, versus I'm a sophomore, junior in college, it's time to get serious or I gotta go, right? Like, it's a very different kind of conversation. And so there's a different it's a different feeling to our conversations and to what we work on.
Right.
I also really like academic coaching students. Academic coaching students are just, they look on the website, they hear about learning specialists, and they want it, and they're willing to pay for it. And they're also very motivated because there's a fee attached, and it's not cheap. There are scholarships. We have lots of scholarships. I also really enjoy working with those students because they want the support and they want the big picture, right? Like, when you go to an academic advisor, they're just focused on your classes and what are you taking next and what do you need to do, and like, let's move your plan forward. Sometimes we don't get to classes. Sometimes I don't talk about school. Sometimes that's my focus. But if you come in and you're like, actually what I'd really like to talk to you about is my dog and how stressed out my dog makes me. Or what I'd really like to talk to you about is how can I cook in the dorms and be able to make healthy meals in the dorms. Honestly, no. There are things that I don't know, especially when it comes to financial questions.
Oh, yeah.
I know 1% of what I probably should, but I'm perfectly willing to help you write the email to the financial aid office. I've gone to the financial aid office with students before, where I come in with my name tag and I stand behind them, and when things are, because the student will say, hey, here are my issues, here's what I want, and then it's hard in the moment to articulate it. So that student advocacy piece is a really, that's probably one of my favorite things. Cliche answer that obviously is true is the students. Honestly, it's the environment. Think Tank as a whole is just a welcoming department.
Yeah.
I mentioned before my quirky coworkers. We're just a weird bunch.
Right.
And I constantly feel so supported and so happy to be part of this team. And especially when there are a hard conversation that I have to have with somebody, or we're trying a new way of supporting students and we're sort of breaking things up. We all see things from very different angles. And so that that group work mentality, we're constantly on this team of people who we are building things and we are creating programming for students because we care. And that love for University of Arizona students. I'm not your mom, I'm not your roommate, I'm not your friend. That's not my job, right? My job is to support your University of Arizona experience. And I mean that in the most holistic, non-advertiser, come have the U of A experience. That's not what I mean, right? There are recruitment people for that. You get 4.5, 5 years to have this experience, right? 18 to 22, 23, this is the weirdest, most ridiculous, most unique time. I think what's so cool about being on a college campus, a traditional college campus, on campus, we've got some commuters, we're not a commuter school, right? And I think one of the things is it's such a unique time as an American student to have this experience, this specific kind of experience. And you get to make it whatever you want. And I think what's so much fun for me, now granted this is my second fall, so that I'll be going into my second spring. I haven't been here very long. But watching students go from scared high school seniors to confident college sophomores, watching that transition, I think it's scary and it's confusing and it's a lot, and you might think that you have all the answers. You might think that everything's gonna go peachy, and they could, and that's also great. Let's celebrate the good things, but everybody has questions, and everybody gets stuck, and everybody has things where they're like, what do I do? Go to your learning specialist. That's step one. Absolutely. I think my favorite conversation I ever had, ever, was a student last fall who realized they were here because their parents wanted them here. And they were like, I hate everything about being here. This is not what I want. I am 18 years old and I don't want to be a college student. And so we talked about it. And we talked about, okay, so let's not register for classes in the spring. Let's back out of this. What do we want to do instead? And I don't know where they are. Could probably check in on them. But being able, or even, hey, the U of A is not for me. I had a student last year who was like, my sister went to NAU, I came to U of A, I can't be away from my sister anymore, I need to go up there. So I helped her with her application.
Yeah.
I like downloaded it, we looked at it, we talked, we like brainstormed the questions, and we like did the transfer paperwork together.